In a previous video I made, I talked about a game called Oddity, which was a rebrand of the original title, Mother 4. I don't exactly have to restate what it is, but for the sake of the people who didn't watch the previous video, allow me to give some context of my personal experience. So in January 2nd, 2020, the channel O197X published the trailer for Oddity. In preparation of the game, the subreddit and fan Discord came to be, and that's about where I was at the time. In my earlier video, I failed to explain just how long this project has been going on, and how many hands this has been transferred over to. To specify now, there has been about 3 changes of lead developers, Pastel being the current one, and his entire existence kinda disappeared around November due to wanting to take a break. Of course, lots of speculation arose from this due to the lead developer basically disappearing, with no idea when he's gonna come back. On top of that, impatience is starting to arise across the subreddit, and the team is possibly starting to see another incident. But is this kind of behavior warranted due to there not being a release date defined, and that we're being teased with a fresh new title that may not even come out?
No.
At the end of the day, it's a free game. None of the creators are going to make money off of this, and the project has had multiple times where it was being pulled around like the good controller in a game of Call of Duty split screen. And in order to even give an idea of how much work was on this game, we need to go back to when it started. Going back to my video, I said the project goes about to 2013. I said that because I was looking at when the Twitter page was founded. After studying a bit, I found out that there was a pre-alpha gameplay of the project that dates back to 2008. Unfortunately, the files for the game engine are missing and it just won't run, so here's some footage I found on the internet. As you can see, this is so early in the project that sprite work for Travis is around here in this evolution diagram. Music from both Mother 2 to 3 are in this pre-alpha, and some songs in the directory aren't even used. At the time, the engine was being used by GameMaker, but further down the development timeline, they would change to their own game engine. I don't have a citation for this, but allegedly the source code for the engine is not going to be released. As stated before, the current lead developer is Pastel, but he isn't the first one. That title goes under Chase Garetta, or Chesu. He and his brother Zach proposed their idea to Starmen.net and wanted to make a fan-made addition to the Mother franchise similar to Mother 3's art style. I'm sure there's more info about the team, but all I got is their Twitter page, a 200-page document about anything that was documented, and the wiki page that gives a brief synopsis of the history prior to the rebrand, which by itself keeps a lot of info left behind, such as the reasoning behind the rebrand. Now, let us speed up the clock a bit into 2012. As games like Black Ops 2 and Halo 4 slamming in the market, the development for Mother 4 soon to have a hiccup with the lead developer Chase leaving the project, with Zephys taking his place due to not having the time to work on the game. Also around this time was when Pastel and Zane would join the project. However, not less than a year after the transfer of leadership, Zephys would leave, also not being able to have the time to work on the project, and then handed the job over to Pastel. Prior to Pastel's time in the project, the game was under several game engines. One of the first was in GameMaker, but due to the limitations of the engine, it was changed to a custom one using C++. Now that Pastel was the big boy in charge, he wanted to scrap the custom engine and instead use C#. This of course meant that the game development had to go back to square one to work on a new engine and understand everything that it works with. Around this time, we now get the build of the Mother 4 website. After all this time since the start, after all the changes, after all the lead devs that were just moving on, we now got to see a little glimpse into the payoff. And for the first time, we get to see a little glimpse of the new game. The game was set to release in winter 2014, but as you all should know, that never happened. But let us imagine that it's still 2013 and you just saw the website. It was an exciting time for everyone due to this being an addition to a new game that was just from a franchise 10 years ago. Now, the webpage is still up to this day, and any info about the game is all for you to read, but to help summarize for you, let me give you some info right about now. Starting off with the characters. Starting off, you got Travis, a 13-year-old in Bellring who enjoys baseball and has his head in the clouds. Then you have Meryl, a 14-year-old in Citrus Hills, who has the power of foresight. Oh no. Up next you have Floyd, a 14-year-old in Pennyburg who has no psychic powers, but he's very confident, but sometimes can be a bit of a drag. Finally, you have Leo, who we have no idea of his origins, but he's the leader of a gang and is probably wanted all across Pleiades. The website also contained a blog of all the updates that happened, and it's pretty well detailed what they were doing, even though we all know that the project never really came out. We did get a good idea of what Pleiades would look like by the map that seemed to copy off of Mother 1's design. There also was a high quality render of PSI abilities that were also made as well. The coolest article I read was about how the team developed the battle background for their games. Included was a formula of how it was made and what it would look like. And on top of that, the dude made a tool for the team that made the background simple to build, where all you needed was a slider in your image of choice. The blogs ended somewhere around 2016 to do a FAQ, with the last few questions being the ones that are really important. Now, as you could probably tell, this was made in 2016, almost 2 years past the original promise, so some people were starting to get more frustrated with the team. Just looking at the blog post can tell you all you need to know about how pissed off some people were. And it's kinda not really that warranted, even if the game wasn't ever coming out. But it wasn't just the fans who were getting tired of waiting. Nelward, another creator for the soundtrack in the project, left the team due to not having the time to work on it. Shane Mesa, the main composer, gave the soundtrack a Creative Commons license under GameChop as well, not a year later after. As a consequence of putting a select group of songs for the album, a huge chunk of songs were just scattered across the internet due to them not being included in the full album Shane made. Among these were songs like Name Please, the early pre-2013 songs, and including all the lost songs and some Nelward songs that are all available in playlists that you can find online. Now I have something I need to talk about before we continue. First, this game was not an official Nintendo game, but was using that same IP to make a prequel or spin-off. For anyone who doesn't know, Nintendo is very defensive of how people use their work. The company is so hell-bent on making sure a consumer doesn't use an emulator, but then proceed to not provide a better alternative. If you want to get a bigger idea of how bad this issue is, check out Neryl's 2 videos about this very topic, because I'm not going to go too much into detail of how much this works, because 1, I'm not a lawyer, and 2, the game didn't even get a cease and desist, so it's kind of pointless to say whether or not it's warranted due to the fact that it already rebranded. That said, while they were impeding on the work, Shigesato Itoi, the original creator of Mother, did give the thumbs up for another game, but he didn't want to make it. So does that mean it's okay to use a continuation of a beloved franchise just because your publisher said okay? Well, yes, but you still have to remember that you're still working with an IP from Nintendo. They could very well snap their fingers and the whole project is just done for. You could also argue that there is a case for Mother 4 being under fair use, but unfortunately that provision of copyright law is what some professional lawyers call fuck so hard in the ass that I can go spelunking in there. And it's a case-by-case resolution of how fair use is interpreted. Speaking of fucked, in 2019, not less than a year before the official rebrand, a 4chan thread was started that leaked a big chunk of information critical to the rebrand and anything related to it. For any of the people that are playing in the background, allow me to tell you to skip past this part of the video as it might include spoilers for Oddity should it come out. Now, let us start with the leak. I had to reread the first line a couple times to understand that the rebrand trailer, not the game, was set out to come out in 2017. Other details about the game were included, such as the final boss, the time the game is set, a plot twist or two, and the game's status as of 2019. The leak was validated by Pastel in a Reddit mega thread on the Mother 4 subreddit, and despite the preceding all being true, it was outdated information and is possibly not the final product. Now, given that this is a leak from a highly anticipated game, some might argue that this is when the game turned into vaporware, or something that was advertised but never actually came out. In some cases, any attempt to rebuild unfinished work would be pointless, as it would never be as satisfactory as what was advertised. Take for example Crackdown 3. 5 years of development and 2 titles under their wing, it's quite a mystery a AAA game that came out in 2019 can only compete against fucking GTA clone Android games. And that's where I believe that the game needed to be rebranded. The main reasoning from Pastel seemed to be, why not? But I personally believe that if they doubled down and actually finished the job, the expectations would have been just way too high. A couple of part-time devs that have their own lives to deal with to stay afloat is never going to compete with the dreck of expectations that come with a mother game, let alone a Nintendo game. Call me a devil's advocate, but there was no way they were ever going to finish the game to their satisfaction, and it showed given that they were already planning on a rebrand well beforehand. It's now 2021, a year past the rebrand, and we are now starting to witness some deja vu from the fanbase. As stated earlier, the lead developer went dark allegedly to take a break, so we have no insight other than an occasional clipping of the game. The subreddit did die down, but it still has its loyal posters keeping the flame open for the fans. I want to pause the video to give a shout out to user PeachyMyAss16 for basically carrying the entire subreddit for this long. Like, seriously, it's amazing. So anyway, like I was saying, we still have no idea when the game's coming out, but it's not like there's a reason to be upset, because, like I said before in my other video, it's like starting over from your 15-page essay and everyone staring at you until you finish. I also want to take a moment to also tell you to check out Press Start to Continue's channel, because he just made a video back in February about this in much greater detail. Probably a little better than what I did, if I'm going to be honest. Again, I'm really condensing the whole history just to get the whole story a brief synopsis, so there's a whole video for you to check out afterwards if you still want to hear more about the game. Anyway, thank you for watching and have a nice day.